This is one of those excerpts that you're going to want to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, pull out your clarinet that's sitting right next to your bed, and play it, and then go back to sleep, and then wake up at 5 o'clock and do it again. This excerpt you have to be able to nail in your sleep every time you pick up the clarinet. If you have a good reed, if you have a mediocre reed, you have to be able to nail this excerpt. This is one of those that is so unforgiving that you have to have it that cold. First of all, you're all going to wonder what this is. This is my new clarinet. Yes, Selmer made me a black clarinet because I needed a matching clarinet to my bass clarinet. So yes, this is the same model. It's the Selmer Privilege B-flat clarinet, and they come in black now. Okay, back to Beethoven. The first rule of playing orchestral excerpts is understanding the context into which you must fit. Knowing the excerpt is not enough. Knowing what everyone else is doing is an absolute must. So we're going to listen to what the context is that the clarinet solo is fitting into. I'll give you a quick sort of guided tour of what you're going to hear. The horn starts with the solo, okay? The horn, what is the rhythm the horn is playing? They're playing in a duple meter. The cello and bass, and probably violas too, I haven't looked at the score lately, are playing triplets. Okay, so you've got this time difference. You've got someone playing in duple meter, you have someone playing in compound meter. Inside of that, after a couple of measures, you have to come in and play on top of everything. Okay, so your register is higher than everyone else. You've got the horns and kind of an alto register, and the cello and bass is obviously in the bass register. You are the only instrument playing in the treble register, and you're playing fairly high. So, but you're also playing duple. You're also playing with a horn who's continuing to play underneath you, but in sort of a supporting role, and then you have the rhythm of the cello still in triplets. Knowing all of this is crucial because you have to know, number one, play in time. They are not going to play with you, you're going to play with them. So always think of the fact that you're playing with the orchestra, not the other way around. And this is especially important to remember when you are in an audition setting and you're playing an excerpt. You have to make sure that you always have the context in your ear. So let's get started. We're going to listen to this excerpt and then I'm going to play it for you and talk about it. Horn, cello. You. Okay, so now I will play it for you and we're going to talk about it. As I'm thinking, before I play this excerpt, I'm starting right at the repeat sign, and I'm going to be listening in my head to the context of the orchestra so that I can fit in like I would in a normal playing setting. If you're in an audition, do this anyway. The committee who's listening to you will wait. I promise. Now, I'd like to point out that you're going to see articulations here that indicate staccato, okay? They're not really staccato. When you listen to it in the context of the orchestra like we just did, everyone else has similar articulations, and you'll hear that the clarinet player does not play da for their staccato. It's a little bit more of a legato, okay? So pay attention to that when you're playing it yourself. You wouldn't go... Nope. That does not sound especially musical, and it certainly doesn't sound Beethoven, and it certainly will not win you in the audition. All right, let's move on. When you're playing this in an audition setting, you're going to play it all the way through. The solo parts, the tutti parts, sometimes the repeats, the whole thing. And it's important for you to know what part is solo and what part is not solo, and where you fit in the context of those as well. So we're going to listen to the next part of it, which is tutti. It is not the clarinet solo. You are playing with who? Let's find out. Here we go. Sounds like flute and oboe. And bassoon. Okay, so who had the melody in that? If you don't know, go back and listen to it again. I'm not going to tell you. But you should know who has the melody, who you're playing with, what role you're playing in any part of the orchestra excerpt. Now I will play the second time through the clarinet solo and into the tutti section, and through the rest of the excerpt, and then we'll talk some more. Tutti. And now, here's something that's important before I go on. is still part of the tutti. It is not part of your solo, so keep that in mind. This whole part of the excerpt creates a bit of a challenge because you're going up and over the break. One suggestion that I have to you, a tip, is lean forward as you're playing this. What that does is it activates your diaphragm in a way that reminds you that you're going to have air support through this entire excerpt, okay? If you're leaning back, if you're feeling relaxed, if you're moving around too much, you're not going to have the consistent support that you're going to need for this excerpt. You're not going to have a 100% chance of nailing it if you're moving around too much. So I sit completely still, I lean a little bit forward into the music, and I let that activate my diaphragm right below my sternum so I can get those high notes out and jump over and through the breaks without having any kind of weird glitches, okay? So I'm gonna play it one more time. I lean forward, especially in the last measure where I have to go ba-da-dee-da-dee-da-da. I'm also voicing the top G all the time. I'm holding that voicing for all of the notes, even the notes that aren't G, because that allows that G to definitely pop out. Yes, it might make your low F sharp a little bit sharp, so be it. That is so crucial that you nail that G with some confidence. So I voice that G, I lean forward, and I hold that for the entire measure. I'll play it one more time. Okay, now we're at the last part of this excerpt. We're still in the trio section. The horns have taken over. They're playing the melody, you're playing along with them, and then you take it to the very, very end of this section, and then it goes back to the top. Let's listen to it one more time, and then I will play it. Listen to the horns. Imitate that. That is such a butt clencher, isn't it? We've just listened to the context of it. You come in out of the horns take it over a second time. They're playing an articulated passage that is exactly like the one you're going to play, so listen to it so that you match it. Okay, and now we're into the measure where you go. That measure is so important, both times that it happens in this excerpt. Here's what you have to listen for. First of all, the second half of that has a crescendo written under it. Notice that in the recording, that whole measure is a crescendo, but mostly in the second half of the measure. So listen to this and try and match whatever you hear on your recording. Second of all, and what is super important, is how you play that high D. I'm going to give you a quick analogy. Think that you're riding on a dirt bike, okay? And you're about to go over a hill. You have two choices. You can take the hill where you kind of jump, catch air, and land a little bit, or you can take the hill where you kind of keep both wheels on the ground, okay? Now, imagine this measure is the same thing. If you catch air on that high D, it's going to mess with your rhythm. It's going to make that D too bright. It's going to give you a less than 100% chance of nailing it. So I'm going to play it first, where I lift those Ds, and I'm going to play it where I keep both wheels on the ground. First is lifting. That D is bright, it kind of, it doesn't have the right sound, and it doesn't set up the B that comes right after it very well. Now I'm going to keep both wheels on the ground. You see how that gives me a lot more security when I'm moving into the crescendo and I'm moving over the break back down from the D to the B, okay? So that's crucial for you to think about. If you lift it, you run the risk of not really nailing the rhythm, and it sounds a little bit bright, and it's kind of risky. So here's that final part of this excerpt. Now this last couple measures of the excerpt is the total stress of the entire thing, because you have to play pianissimo, you're going to that high G, it's super exposed, there's a slight retard. It's just like, that's the thing that stresses everybody out, stresses me out too. Here are a couple of tricks to nail that last measure. Number one, like I did before, I lean forward, so I'm giving myself the support in my diaphragm underneath my sternum. Number two, I am voicing that top G starting at the beginning of the measure. Number three, and this comes from Russ Dega via Catherine, who suggested that I tell you this, and it totally made a big change in me, is to take your right hand, the thumb that holds the clarinet up, and gently push it up into your mouth a little bit. Now what that does is it pushes it up against your top teeth. That also releases it from your bottom teeth, so that when you're playing that high G, it's forced away from your bottom teeth. You'll be less likely to squeeze your embouchure and pinch that G so it sounds tiny. You want to be able to have it stay open even though it's a pianissimo. So here we go. Fingers crossed. More practicing to do. So playing orchestral excerpts, even if you have no interest in playing in an orchestra at all and never plan to take an audition, is a great practice exercise because it forces you to be extremely mindful of what's going on in the context of that particular part in the orchestra. You have to listen, so it's a great listening exercise, and then you have to practice blending and fitting in without being able to listen to the people you're playing with except in your head. So that's why it's so mindful. So it's great discipline, it's great practice, even if you're not going to be in an orchestra. So don't disregard this kind of stuff. Go out and pick yourself up some excerpts and practice as though you were going to take an audition. It will make you a better player, okay? See you next time.